Hello, welcome to Lawn Plugged. Today with us we have a very special guest who doesn't need any introduction. With us we have Srinath Khemka sir. For all those of you who don't know Srinath Khemka sir, he graduated from the Nalsar University of Law in 2017. After that he pursued his LLM in jurisprudence and public laws from the University of Cambridge. And after that he's returned to India and now he's doing litigation in the Punjab and Haryana High Court. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it.
Thank you for having me here.
So, Srinath, if you are able to recall, you judged us once for our intra moot court at NLU Nagpur. Right.
Yes.
So, we were very, we were not that professionals back then. We were not able to present ourselves that properly. But did you ever think did you ever have a wild thought that, these boys who are not able to speak properly in front of a judge will ever be able to invite me for a talk show?
No, that was not, to be honest, that was not the impression that I had of you. I had said it then and I repeat it now. You guys were much more articulate than I was when I was your age. The only difference between being a comfortable speaker and not being a comfortable speaker is exposure and confidence. You get confidence if you get good exposure. You get good exposure if you put yourself out there. So I always encourage it. You can't go head to head with, say, the Chief Justice of India at your age, but who knows, when you are his age, you might best him. So don't beat yourself up for it, and it's always a pleasure to be invited by you, by your college.
Thank you so much, sir. We are really glad to hear that. So further, sir, moving on, please take us through your 5 years at Nalsar University and which activities did you enjoy the most?
Well, 5 years of law school went by pretty fast. I remember my first year distinctly. I remember my second and third year in a mixed category, and I don't really remember too much of my fourth and fifth year, surprisingly. But I'd say the only 3 things I really remember of Nalsar is being consistent in my classes. I was not a religious student in my schooling days. So one of the regrets I had, which I wanted to do in law school, was to be thorough with my studies. And thorough doesn't mean that I was a bookworm. It basically meant that I would come back every day, spend an hour, revise whatever happened in class. In fact, I was notorious for not studying during examinations. People used to wonder why I come in the top 2-3 ranks of the class and never study. I figured that I just wanted to polish my basic principles, my understanding of the course. The second thing I remember very distinctly is running. I love to run. I run about 5 to 6 kilometers every day. So that is one of the best things I remember of Nalsar. That is my most profound memory. I would go for a run every evening. And of course, third thing I really loved was my friends. I used to play a lot of cards. We used to bunk classes to play cards. We would not play cards. We would just bunk classes seeing other people play cards. So it was a lovely time. They went by very fast. Somebody actually said to me when I was in my second year, one guy 1 year elder to me told me that law school, the days seem to last forever, but the years fly by. And there is great profundity in what was said, and I resonate with it even now.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Actually, it sounds strange because you say that you are not a bookworm, but when I check your LinkedIn profile, it says that you won 5 gold medals back in Nalsar.
Yeah.
Election laws, constitutional laws, taxation laws. So such a talented person. Yeah. So
No. I don't like false adulation. I think it defeats the purpose of merit. I am not a very modest guy, so if I do think I am good, I will say that I am good, but I probably got those gold medals because the professor liked my personality.
Being very candid there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, sir, I was saying that. How did you got your interest in election laws, anti-corruption, anti-bribery laws?
All right. Now, I'm not really very interested in anti-bribery laws. In the very statutory sense of anti-bribery laws, I am not very interested in what the Prevention of Corruption Act says, or what the Whistleblower Protection Act says, or what the Company Act says. My interest was always in broader principles of public law. My father is a civil servant. He's very well known, Mr. Khemka, right? So I had a lot of exposure to administrative law, being his son, right? I could see the various aspects of the administration. Now, public law is the confluence of constitutional law and the administrative law, right? Because fundamental right litigation is not hardcore constitutional law. The core precepts of constitutional law is the architecture by which the state is set up. Now, those laws in litigation closely resemble election laws, because election law is the closest you can come to those parts of the constitution. You can also come between the basic structure doctrine, that is scope of judicial review. Those are all questions which for me are the core tenets of public law. So I was always interested in that. Therefore election law, but anti-bribery law picked up a little bit to do with my family upbringing, a little bit to do with the recent debates in public law. In fact, I think that the most unexplored area of public law right now is the aspect of misuse of public office and various tortious public torts that have been committed, which closely come to corruption or bribery, right? So that's how I became interested in this.
Right, so yeah, just to add on that, yeah, your flair towards that area of law can be truly seen. I recently saw a YouTube video where it was a debate on uniform civil code and
dispute.
I really enjoyed watching that.
Thank you.
Okay, Srinath. So I think you are the perfect person to ask this question. So what was the difference between teaching pedagogy of Cambridge than that of Nalsar? And do you think Indian law schools should incorporate that methodology?
Now that's a difficult question to answer, because there is no teaching pedagogy in a master's course, especially at Cambridge and Oxford. So I'll explain to you how Oxbridge worked. Now, unlike Indian law schools, which are on the American standard of a semester system, and then you having 4 or 5 subjects, and those subjects changing every semester, and 3 exams or 2 exams every sem per subject. British legal education is very different, at least in the master's course. So you're supposed to pick up 4 subjects, and you carry those 4 subjects throughout the 3 terms. So there's no change. There's no constitutional law 1, 2, 3, or there's no constitutional law 1, then administrative law or some other subject. You pick 4 subjects and you do them throughout the year. Total teaching hours per subject is 8 plus 8, 16 plus 6, 22, 44 hours per subject for a year, right? We do much more for a subject in a semester, and we have many more subjects. They have 4, some law schools do 5, some law schools do 6. The aim in these universities is not to spoon feed you, because you are at that level of pedagogy yourself. You've completed your schooling and 5 years of college. So when you come to a university, the idea is to allow you enough time that you can find your love, right? So those courses are inherently designed differently from collegiate courses, where in collegiate courses it's like a buffet. You taste everything at a college level, and in university you decide, okay, I like ice cream, I want to stick with ice cream, or I like the Chinese counter, I'm going to go there. But yes, there are differences. There are vast differences. I don't want to be critical of our institutions unfairly, but when they say that there is a difference between a foreign graduate lawyer and an Indian graduate lawyer, the idea is not so much as to say the merit of the law student, it is to do with the exposure that a law student. Are our professors bad and their professors better? Perhaps, right? There are good quality professors everywhere. There are average quality professors everywhere. But between Cambridge and Nalsar, certainly the quality of educators were far, far better than the average quality was far, far better than that of Nalsar. But I don't think that is primarily what makes the difference. The difference is exposure. Now, if you go to a bigger and a better university, students do far more interesting things, right? I think Abdul Kalam said that you are limited by your imagination, something like that, which is very true when it comes to a career, right? There was a very famous story that I remember reading in my class 11th or 12th for CBSE English, where there's a story of this rickshaw puller's son. And somebody interviews him and he says, I want to be a driver. I want to drive a car. So somebody asks, if you want to drive, why not a plane? He says, I've never seen a plane, right? So the point is that if you go to these universities, you realize that there is so much more that can be done, right? When we graduate, honestly, from Nalsar, the biggest thing to happen in my batch was getting placed in a law firm. Better yet, if you're placed in a British law firm. People don't have the vision because there is no exposure. People don't have a vision about academics. They don't have a vision about policy. They don't have a vision about politics, about law practice, about judiciary. There's so many things that one can do. But it really depends on how exposed the students are, right? Like good parentage, good education is not spoon feeding a child. It is to make him capable of being able to eat on his own. And that necessarily requires giving great amount of exposure, which I think is pretty much lacking in Indian institutions, even the top Indian institutions.
Right.
Great.
Moving on, Srinath, as you know, life of a young litigator is full of ups and downs. It's full of hard work and challenges, and encouragement plays a key role over here. Even a slightest mode of appreciation makes your day. So, as a young litigator, what are the most profound challenges you've ever faced?
I'll be very honest. The biggest problem with law practice is procurement of work. How good you are in court, how well researched you are. Those things are second, third, fourth, fifth stages of a legal profession. The first problem is how do you appear before a judge? You can't appear before a judge if you don't have a case. And how do you get a case if you're a new lawyer? So that is the most challenging thing. In fact, that is the most challenging thing even if you become a senior advocate. A lot of senior advocates are facing this anguish in COVID times because they were used to doing 9 or 10 matters a day. Now they can only do 2 or 3 matters, right? So procurement of work, having enough quantity of work is important. I'll tell you why. If you have more quantity of work, you can be selective about what you do. You cannot be a specialist if you don't have a good quantity of work, right? They say beggars are not choosers, right? A hungry man likes anything to eat. Similarly is with a career. You can only specialize, you can only get a good quality if you have enough quantity, because then you can choose, right? So I'll give you a very simple example, a very simple calculus that I learned 5-6 months into profession. They say that, if you have 2 matters worth 1 lakh and you can only do 1 matter, you say 120. And you keep increasing the rate till one of them drops out. Naturally, you have picked a greater fee and you have also optimized your time. So that's how it happens at all levels, pecuniary, qualitative, quantitative levels. That is what I would say is the biggest challenge as a young litigator, especially if you're not from a first generation lawyer like I am. But I have the privilege of a few connections of myself and my father's connections. I will be very blunt about it, right? I did not have to struggle excessively hard for it. I got a few cases on my own. The initial push, I was fortunate to get it, right? I'd worked with certain lawyers. They were gracious enough to pass on certain briefs to me. My father helped me get a few briefs in the starting. So I will not say that I have really faced the grind that a young litigator faces. I will not give myself that credit. But still, it is not easy litigating in courts.
So coming back to your days of studying in Cambridge, you got the Trace scholarship, and then you went to Cambridge. So tell us more about Trace scholarship and how exactly does it work, and also did you apply for any other scholarships?
Yeah, so I applied for a couple of scholarships. I actually got 5 scholarships. Trace was the only one which was fully funded by the University of Cambridge itself. I did not make it to Rhodes. I did not apply for. I made it to the interview round of Commonwealth. Did not go any further. I didn't apply to Felix. I made a mistake while applying to INLAX. I didn't submit the DD, so my application was never really considered. But Trace scholarship, I didn't know about Trace. I mean, it was on the university's website. That is where I found the information. Trace is an organization in the US. I worked there after I completed my scholarship because they gave me an opportunity to work for 2 months in DC. So I went to Maryland in DC in the US. I worked for 2.5 months there. They're basically a small. It's difficult to explain. They're a research/compliance/law firm kind of an entity. They have 2 wings. One is a law firm entity. One is an NGO entity. So they were gracious enough to pay 50 lakhs to fund my education. I am not complaining.
Right.
Great.
Thank you for being very honest here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Srinath, very few graduates actually choose to go for litigation. Even in law school, very few students are election law or anti-corruption law fanatics. So how would you encourage young students to study and take an interest in these areas?
I would say that I would ideally not encourage lawyers to pick up a certain field of law or to even pick up litigation. I don't know if you guys have ever been in love, but it is the best analogy to give. Litigation is like falling in love. You cannot choose to fall in love. You just fall in love, and then it doesn't seem effortful. For the profession, if you are really litigating, in my experience, you don't feel it is work. I love every single moment I work, unabashedly, right? You cannot cultivate this fervor in somebody by encouraging it. Live with the idea that you can cultivate love, you can cultivate passion. Because litigation is a profession which is not of discipline as much as it is of passion. Discipline is important in any pursuit of human life, but this is passionate pursuit. Because there is nothing. I mean, you can be a complete failure, you can be an overnight success. So to answer your question, I'd say I would not ideally encourage anybody. My only, if I were a professor in a law school, or if I were a parent, my idea would have been to encourage my ward or my student to get exposed to these things. That's it, no more, right? Because if they have it, they have it. If they don't have it, they don't have it.
So this is the last segment of our interview. This is called the on your fingertips round. It's like a rapid fire thing, and you should be super quick while answering them. Okay, let's start.
Yes.
So the very first thing, tell me 3 things which are in your bucket list.
3 things in my bucket list. My brother's going to Harvard Law School, so I want to go meet him there. I would, I don't know, I'm getting my office refurnished, so I'd want to see that completed. And I know this is a little funny, but I'm looking to get married soon.
So that is where the love example came from.
Yeah. See, I'm love stricken.
Yeah, whoever is watching this, if your future wife is watching this, and
You'll be very happy.
yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
So given an opportunity to restart your law school life once again, which one thing you're gonna do it again, or you would not like to do the thing again?
Okay, if I could do it again, I would certainly be more diligent with my time. I'm not saying I would have studied more, but I would have been more diligent with my time.
Moving on. So if given an opportunity to create a law, which silly law you would have created? One silly law you want to create?
And silly law.
Yeah.
I mean, a silly law will run the test of arbitrariness, I'm assuming, but notwithstanding, I don't know. I mean, I don't really like people with weird haircuts, so I'd be a Kim Jong-un and say that these are the haircuts you can have.
That was quite witty.
I am from Chandigarh. You have to understand, I am from Chandigarh. Everybody is like bald from here.
Yeah.
That was quite witty. Yeah, that is what we were expecting. Exactly.
I guess we have again lost him.
Yeah. No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Quite interesting that was.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, tell me 2 things a judge, as a young litigator, any 2 things that the judge appreciates the most?
You have to be very well prepared. If you're well prepared, the judge loves it. Your job as a lawyer is actually to help out the judge. A lawyer is not a broker. As we say in the Hindi, vakil dalal nahi hota. You are not your client's voice box or mouthpiece. You are there to make the judge understand. The role of a lawyer is to make the judge understand what is his client. So you are a communicative bridge. So the 2 things that judge likes is if you are pliable, that is, you act as a communication channel, not as a voice mouth of your client. Secondly is if you're well prepared with it. Judges love it. Trust me. They will love you for it if you're well prepared. And a judge can know in 5 seconds if you're prepared.
Rightly said. So the last question, given an opportunity to litigate or argue in one landmark case of Supreme Court, which one would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a very big aficionado of the entire Supreme Court litigation, the concept of Supreme Court litigation. But one case which went to the Supreme Court, I would have loved to argue at the High Court stage was Rajbala versus State of Haryana. It was an election law case which went from my High Court, that is the Punjab Haryana High Court, to the Supreme Court. It was overturned in the Supreme Court. I don't agree with what the Supreme Court said academically, but I have to follow it because it is.
It's fun talking to you.
So it was glad speaking with you. It was glad seeing both the sides of you. First in the intra-moot court where we were grilled by you, you grilled us and we felt like we don't know anything. And now the other side of you, very candid, a very fun side of you. So really glad to hear that.